Well, we are at 12:14. And I want to go ahead and respect everybody's time and get started on time. So Mike, do you want to say a couple of brief things? And then we'll get going with Stephen's amazing presentation.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So I'm Mike Morgan. I'm the chair of the board for APADC, and we're very happy to have everybody joining us today. I don't know that Stephen necessarily needs an introduction, but yeah, he is Mr. Basketball for the DC area for sure. Photographs for the Wizards, the Mystics, and I just found out the Go-Go's, the G League team, and also had the incredible opportunity of photographing for the Olympics in Tokyo earlier this year. So we're really looking forward to hearing about all of that. So with that, I think we'll just go ahead and get started, and want to thank Stephen for being here. Stephen, why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about your journey, how you got into photography. I don't think you're a DC native, so maybe tell us how you got here, and we'll just take it away.
Okay, so I am not from here. I'm British. I'm from a town called Stockport, which is just outside of Manchester. So I usually just tell people I'm from Manchester because that's easier because you've heard of it. I have a degree in documentary and fine art photography from the University of Liverpool. I sort of always knew I wanted to be a photographer from a pretty young age. And then right after graduation, I moved over here. I worked in New York for a minute as a photo editor, just for a little bit, but that didn't work out. So I moved to DC in the summer of 2007. And the NBA was one of the first gigs that I booked as an assistant. So that summer, the WNBA All-Star Game was in DC, and a photographer from New York found my name on an assistant list and had me come in and just assist her for 4 days while she was doing portraits of the players and then shooting the game. So I just did 4 days of work for her, and I thought nothing more of it until a couple of months later, the Wizards replaced their team photographer with a guy that I had met during All-Star, and he remembered me, so he brought me in to assist him. And that's sort of how this journey got started. So that was 14 years ago. So I just started my 15th season. So I started as an assistant in digital tech. So I was helping with setting up cameras, laying lines for our strobes. And then at that point, we were still editing our own images. And by editing, I don't mean photoshopping. I just mean adding caption data and sending to Getty Images to be published. So I did that for a few years. And then I started second shooting games. So I was shooting in addition to him. And then about 5 years ago, I was primary shooting games in addition. And then this past off season, he left. And so I was promoted. So I'm now the official team photographer. But yeah, so a lot of basketball. So NBA, WNBA, and then G League. So the development league, which is sponsored by Gatorade. So it's the Gatorade League. So the Capital City Go-Go. So as I look up here on my calendar, I have 19 basketball games to shoot in the month of January. So it's a lot of basketball. But yeah, so then I shoot a lot of, I'm going to share my screen really fast. I do a lot of portrait work as well. Which one do I want to share? That one, share. So this is obviously, some of my basketball work. A lot of remote cameras. And then all of my basketball work is shot with strobes. So I'm able to get, in theory, a nicer quality image than if I was just shooting available light. But then a good amount of portrait work, be it with athletes or I do some corporate work, I do some editorial, I do some commercial, just whatever pops up. But that helps, I was saying to Mike, it helps intersplice the other basketball. So I'm not just doing basketball because that could be a little overwhelming. But yeah, so that's
Well, I'm curious,
in a nutshell.
how do you how are you able to balance those things, when you've got freelance work coming in, but you've got the rigors of the basketball season to juggle as well? How do you make that work?
So previously, because I wasn't the team photographer here, so I was a team photographer without a team. So there's a few photographers in the league that kind of have that designation, as it were. So there are 32 teams, so there are like 32 team photographers, and then there's a couple of extras. So I wasn't the team photographer, so I had more flexibility, and if I had a better paying gig on the line, I would do that. Now that I'm the team photographer, it switches. So this has to take precedence. So I'm sort of now in the position where I'm going to be referring more work out to other people. So I do a lot of work for the University of Maryland's business school. And then when I got back from the Olympics in August, I had Mystics games. And so it was like a 4-day shoot, and I was only able to do one of those days. But then I was able to refer the other 3 days out to a couple of photographers that I use a lot. So now I'm just going to be referring more work out.
I see. All right. So there's actually a question in the chat, and I think that's okay. We can take some questions in the chat along the way.
Sure.
So Judy was asking, so how do you strobe athletic movement on the court? Does it not interfere with play? And are they not in the
people always ask this, it's like, does it not bother the players? And my answer is, I don't care. And the NBA doesn't care, because the NBA wants better quality images. So you're not allowed to use flash on camera. You're not allowed to have a flash that's going direct. My strobes are in the rafters, so they're coming from above. So next time a basketball game is on TV, watch, and every now and then you're going to see a flash. But it's like so quick. Like the players are so used to it, they don't even notice. Most other people don't, like even photographers don't notice unless they're aware of it, by being told by me, for example. But yeah, no, it doesn't affect. And if it does, the NBA doesn't care because they want the better quality images. Isn't it the same for hockey too? I've heard. So yeah, it is the same for hockey. So the guy that is the current Caps photographer and the previous Caps photographer didn't use strobes. They used to, like a decade ago, but when the photographer changed, they just decided not to. And honestly, with hockey, it's easier not to, because you've got this massive sheet of ice that is bouncing a ton of neutral light around, and they just choose not to. But like some hockey arenas do strobe, and yeah, it's the same theory. But so all the other, so the wire services and the newspapers are at like f2.8, a thousandth of a second, and probably ISO 3200. I'm at ISO 320. So it's a big difference, and I'm also at f6.3. But then the way I have my lights aimed, I also have them wrapped so that I'm spotlighting the court and then the crowd goes black. So my players stand out more against the backgrounds, which if we go back to that real fast, share, NBA action. So you can see how the background is so much darker. The front row is sort of illuminated, because I can only sort of like aim them so much before it starts to affect the court, and I do need the benches to be illuminated. But for the available light photographers, like this is the same light that is over here, so their images are more busy. But yeah, so yeah, I don't care if the strobe bothers people, because I want my photos to look better. That's a better example. That's nice and black in the background. Yeah, but so it's Speedotron Blackline 2400 watt second packs, and there are 8 of them that are daisy chained together with I think it's the 805 heads. Maybe that's wrong, but there are 4 flash tubes in each head, and I think I've got them at about 1600 watt seconds. I don't have them on full power, but so I can't shoot on multiple frames. I get one shot every 3 seconds because the strobes have to recycle. So I have to pick and choose the moment I'm photographing. So I might miss more, or I might not pick the right moment, but then the moments I do pick are better lit. That is the hope. Stop sharing.
Interesting. Wow. So you've got those quad heads up there blasting, and those speedotrons, those feel like, I mean, I used to shoot some live action sports 20 plus years ago, and that was definitely, it was speedotrons up there.
It was probably the same packs.
Might have
They've not changed.
Yeah. Well, they are workhorses, and they're the kind of packs you probably want to leave plugged in and not have to touch.
Yeah. And it's like whenever it's a funny little tidbit, but like, so they do like monster truck rallies at Capital One Arena, and they have the horse show come, which obviously kicks up a lot of dust. So I have to then wrap my packs and my heads in garbage bags to protect them, because otherwise all that dust's going to go in the intake fan and fuck up my pack. So
sure. Eli had an interesting question about just how many strobes do you have up there? How are they attached, and radio signal interference? Other photographers coming, and maybe
so there is the ability to have 4 different sets. So there could in theory be 4 different photographers shooting on a different set each, and then each set you can put as many as you want on each set. So I have 8 lights per set, and I have 2 sets. So like all 4 corners, and then half court on each side facing out. So that's 8. And then luckily we're in one of the buildings where it's wired down through the building, and then I run a line out from the back where it's wired through the building, and then I connect it to Pocket Wizards. And there is a ton of interference in the building, which is super annoying. And so you can be like 10 feet away from your Pocket Wizard, and sometimes it won't fire, and it's really annoying. But there's nothing else to do. So for my handheld, I actually hardwire that. So it's a little hot piece attachment with a mini phone plug that I run directly back to this big pack where all the strobes are wired, and it plugs directly in. So that fires every time. The remotes don't fire every time. Like it might, or they will fire, but there'll be interference between the radio transmitters. So sometimes it doesn't pick up the flash. So I think 1 in every like 15 to 20, the frame will be black. And so I've just missed that shot, but there's nothing you can do. Like I don't get interference at the Mystics Arena because it's a smaller arena and there's obviously less interference. But at Capital One, there's a lot of interference. So there's a new thing that Pocket Wizard has that's it's called the Raven by Fusion. So it's like a new trigger basically, and that has the ability to tell you how much noise interference there is on each channel. So I've just ordered that, and so hopefully I'm going to see what then channel has the least interference, so I can switch what channels I'm using to that. But that's a $500 trigger.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So another thing I'm a little curious about was, I mean, how much sports had you really shot before you started doing it? Okay, all right.
None.
So
absolutely not. And I knew nothing about
what was
basketball.
that like? Yeah.
we don't play basketball, we play football back home. So the first few years, I wasn't shooting. I was assisting in digital teching. So I learned the game of basketball by assisting. And then when I started shooting, the guy that I worked with, had taught me a lot by that point in time. And so it was, there was a big learning curve. But yeah, so I just, it's sort of like you just, you pick it up as you go by watching what the other people were doing, because there was definitely a lead time between me being there and then starting shooting. So yeah, it was just more, the guy that I worked with taught me how to do it, basically.
Yeah.
And then so at the Olympics and previously at the WNBA bubble last summer, I had to shoot those available light, which I'd never done. So that was a learning curve as well, because I'd never shot sports, with multiple frames, high ISO, because I'd just never been in that situation. So that was a fun. I don't like it because I can't control my light. It's annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's fine.
Interesting. Well, was there sort of an aha moment at some point where you're like, okay, all of a sudden it's clicking, like I understand what I need to do to be able to capture the image I want to capture? Like what was
There was definitely so the system that we run is complicated. The strobes, how they're wired, the multiple pocket wizards, which I should be able to show like an interesting thing. So this is one of the glass remotes that hangs upside down, and then this is black wrap on the glass to cut reflection off, because you pick up reflection from the floor. That's the other side of the glass, that's the polar remote. But then each camera needs its own separate pocket wizard, and each camera works on a delay because of the strobes, which is annoying and difficult to figure out. And then we run a line around the court from my seated position to the other basket to fire the remotes. And then you have to deal with polarity, which was, because I'm not an electrician, I don't know about polarity, but so when it's basically lamp wire. And so it's a mini phone cable, which let me grab one. But basically, if you stick it in the wrong way, it won't work for whatever reason. And if you stick it in the wrong way in the light line, it fires the lights, which again is super annoying. But yeah, so it's a household cable. And I hold that up here. And so if you plug it, it only has two. If you plug it in the wrong way, it won't work, or it fires the lights wrong. So you have to switch it around. So there was definitely an aha moment when I figured the system out. And that took a long time, and longer than I would like to admit. Because again, I have an art degree, like I don't know. But yeah, and so there was definitely sort of an aha. There was a point in time when I didn't think I was going to be doing this forever. Like now, it's very much my career. But like when I moved here, I worked for a studio and I shot portraits for attorneys 24/7. I also second shot weddings, and then I shot my own weddings for a good amount of time. And there was a few years where I was pretty successful at shooting weddings, and I honestly thought I was going to do that. But then, back surgery, not wanting to shoot weddings anymore. And then just the increased opportunities the NBA was giving me, that was an aha moment. That was like, that's the path. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry,
well,
people ask questions and I go off on tangents. So if I'm going too far, reel me in.
No, this is perfect. I'm curious too, in terms of these aha moments. What about the, not just the technical aspects, but what was the aha moment for capturing, the art, like of actually like understanding how to capture the moment, in a basketball game? Because I at least, if my own experience of shooting sports was, by the time you see the play happening, you're too late. It's already happened. So, and you've got so many things. You've got the strobe. You've got all the stuff. I mean, how did you get to that point of figuring out? Okay, here's how we make this.
So again, it was the photographer I worked with who brought me in initially, who basically like he taught me that, it's like, do you shoot the drive? Do you shoot the shot? Certain players release their shot quicker than others, so you have to know which players shoot in which ways. Like some players go up, like really pause and then shoot, and some just go up and shoot. And so if you shoot in a certain, you might have missed that second one. So it was, being around basketball for as long as I have at this point, and again, like it's been 15 years. The photographer that I worked with teaching me how to do it, you pick your moments, and especially with the remotes, because they're on a slight delay, there's like a 0.05 delay. You're sort of like watching the play develop, and you sort of know when to press that button. So it's more just like being around it as long as I have, the guy that taught me. And now I'm a basketball fan, and now like you learn how certain players shoot, how they move. And so like John Wall would never he would never drive or dribble left. So I knew he wasn't coming this way. So you can anticipate, like, and every now, like once in a blue moon he would, but you anticipate. And so sometimes you'll get that wrong, but mostly, just with the familiarity of shooting it, you get it right.
Yeah, that's amazing, because I think most people probably assume that the images happen thanks to the power of a motor drive in your camera or something, that
for other photographers, it happens that way.
You spray enough shots and then the right one's going to be in the middle there, but you're really like capturing it in the moment, which is pretty mind-blowing.
There's going to be like certain shots I get wrong. They just are. But then, it's a long game. You're going to get ample more opportunities. You just hope that you don't screw up an important moment. So if it's close towards the end of the game and you're talking like a buzzer beating shot to win the game, like I always shoot that looser than I normally would to make sure I don't cut the ball off by accident. And then if it's on the other side of the court, again, you shoot looser. You can also get the clock, because if they've done that shot and the clock is reading 0.0 or 0.5, like that's a good moment to get, because it's a buzzer beater. So it's just, it's anticipation and familiarity, and it's been a lot of basketball.
Very cool. Well, so a couple more questions in the chat. We'll get to real quick. So Judy was asking, when you say we, so do you have an assistant?
So I say we mostly because me and the previous photographer worked together for 14 years. So the other photographer, I think, is like the best NBA photographer in the league. Other people might dispute that. I think he's the best. So Ned Dishman trained me, and I worked with him. So when I say we, I'm still mostly referring to him. I do have an assistant. I've brought on 2 assistants to help me this year, but they're not shooting. They are shooting games because we have a spot for them, but they're not shooting for the league or for the team. They're mostly just shooting for themselves at this point to get them used to how to shoot games, but they're mostly there to help me set up, help me break down. And then if something goes wrong during the game, like sort of like if I pop a fuse in one of my strobes in the rafters, I can send them up to go reset it. So I always need a second person.
Sure. And then Sam is asking, this is interesting. So the remote rigging, I mean, are you setting those cameras up at the beginning of each game? Wow. Okay.
So for a 7 o'clock game, which is mostly when games start, I get there at 1. So I have to set up 4, 5. So I'm running 5 remotes at this point in time. So 2 glass, 1 high pole, 1 on the floor, which is there's a cutout in the bottom of the basket, so I can place my camera there. And then I have 1 in the rafters. The 1 in the rafters with a 300 prime stays there because I don't have to take that down. It's not in the way. But because Capital One Arena, they also have concerts and ice hockey games. the floor and the baskets get taken off after each game. So I have to set it up and break it down every single time. So it's running lines, so cords out from the back where we plug in for the strobes. Those run out from each corner to the basket. I have a cord that goes from where I sit all the way around the court to the other basket, which fires the remotes, setting up the remotes, all the pocket wizards. So 4 pocket wizards for each remote, 2 to receive for the light, 1 to transmit. So I'm running 8 pocket wizards per game, 5 remote cameras, my handheld camera, my 2 handheld cameras, because I have one that isn't it's a lot. So I get there at 1, set up the remotes. I'm done with that by 3. I have to photograph players arriving for the game. That usually starts at 3:30 and goes till 5:30. I edit those photos real quick, send them to the league. I will then shoot some players warming up. I will quickly eat something at 6 o'clock, and then 6:30, the players who have been warming up get off the court so I can turn the cameras on, because I don't want to leave them on from 1 o'clock because the batteries will run down. Game starts at 7, usually ends by 9:30. Break all the images, break all the equipment down and leave. The best part is I don't edit photos. All of my remote cameras and my handheld camera have a Ethernet cord plugged into them. As soon as I shoot an image, it goes directly to New Jersey, to the NBA head office in Secaucus, and I have a game editor that edits my photos for me. So I have no after. Like, once the game is done, it's done. And I only have to edit images for myself to like add to my website, add to my social media.
That's amazing. Okay,
so it's like a 9.5 hour day for a game day.
Yeah. So you're entirely dependent on that Ethernet cord. You don't also have a card in the camera or something that as a backup?
There is a card in the camera as well, to save for backup.
I see. Okay, interesting. All right. I have a couple quick questions from the chat. Rob wants to know, do you play hoops occasionally yourself? How tall are you? When can we see you playing in the NBA?
No, I can't shoot for shit. I'm a football player. I'm a retired football player because I broke my kneecap and then had back surgery. I'm 5'10". I'm normal. I'm regular height. No, I'm a rock climber now.
And then Sam has an interesting question. The remotes, the cameras, the kit, and all that, does this all belong to you, or is this the okay? All right.
All me. So we're all freelance. You know, the NBA has in-house for social and video, but they do not have in-house for photo. We're all contract freelancers. So in theory, at any point, they can get rid of me if they don't like me. So, you know, I have to make sure that they continue to like me. But yeah, all my equipment's my own.
Do the equipment
I built it up over time.
Yeah. Did the manufacturers make equipment available to you, like on a particular basis? You know.
Oh, Canon hooked me up for Tokyo.
Yeah.
That was great.
Sure.
Yeah, they lent me an R5. I have an R5 now, but I didn't then. So they lent me an R5 with like 5 lenses to play around with. I didn't get an R3, which would have been cool. But they did give me an extra 1DX Mark III because I only had one, so they gave me a second one. I also borrowed a tilt shift lens that I didn't take because I couldn't fit it in my bag, which I was bummed about. They lent me a 400 2.8, which I don't own. I have a 300 2.8. So Canon hooked me up for Tokyo, which was nice. But for all my gear that I own, like I have a contact at Robert's Camera in Indianapolis, and I have a contact with B&H. That when I'm buying gear, I go through them. But like Canon doesn't give me nothing directly. I'm not a big enough deal.
Around here you are, though. For if it was up to us.
I mean, one day for sure. Yeah, that's the goal. I'll be a Canon Explorer of Light, which doesn't sound pretentious at all.
That's right. Well, so Chris wants to know, so what cameras and lenses are you using? What are your workhorses out there?
So all of my remotes, so my 5 remotes are Canon 1DX Mark Ones. So, they're a few years old now, but they work. And 18 megapixels is more than enough. They're all at ISO 400. So there's just no reason to replace them because they're more than enough. So I have 5 of those. 4 of them have 16 to 35 2.8 Mark IIs. So we're up to the Mark III now, but they all have Mark IIs. The 300 2.8 Mark II is upstairs in the rafters. I have my main lens for shooting basketball is great. So it's a 28 to 300. So it's a push pull. So I don't have to have 2 cameras that I'm switching off to get near court and far court. So this 28 to 300, 1 camera, this is what I use for my handheld for the whole game. And then I have an R5 with a 16-35 version 3 on it that I'll use to then do anything on the court pre-game or post-game. I have a 24-70 2.8. I have a 70 to 200 2.8. I have a 50 prime and a 100 macro that are holdovers from when I shot weddings. A whole bunch of pocket wizards, and they have to be multi-maxes because you have to be able to put the delay on them, and the multi-maxes are the only ones that do that. Yeah, so I have a lot of gear on the floor over here. I'm just looking at it. A lot of like my remote cameras I leave there. I have a locker, so I just leave them there. There's no reason for me to bring them home. So just like my R5 is here and my 1DX Mark III. But yeah, I'm charging a ton of batteries right now for tomorrow. So I'm surveying. But yeah, so I don't have any specific RF lenses for the R5. I have the adapter and I'm still using all my EF lenses.
I see. All right. Yeah, and that kind of answers Jim's question about whether you have an office or if you take everything back and forth. So they give you a locker there to store all the equipment in. That's yeah.
Yeah, I don't have an office there. I have a locker in the photo work room where I store a lot of stuff that is basically just used there. So it would be a real hassle to have to bring that back. I have an office in my condo that's 10 by 10 that I am outgrowing really quickly. So we are looking at buying a new house because we need more space. Yeah.
Oh. And then I see we'll definitely get to Judy's question here. Dominic asked DSLR or mirrorless, but so it sounds like you're kind of doing a hybrid right now.
Yeah, it's mostly DSLR, but then my portrait work is then all mirrorless because I'm using the R5 for all my portrait stuff. But then it's also come in really handy for like shooting press conferences and behind the scenes stuff because it's so quiet.
Yeah, for sure. So Judy's question is a great segue to hearing about your Olympic experience.
Oh yeah, we haven't talked about that.
Yes. I think we'd love to see some images. We'd love to hear about the logistics, what that was like, how you got hooked up with that in the first place, and what was the day-to-day like there at the Olympics?
So because of COVID, the NBA season started late, which meant the finals went late. So the top 4 photographers in the NBA are Nat Butler, who is the Knicks and the Nets photographer, Andy Bernstein, who is the Lakers Clippers photographer. You've got Jesse Garabrandt, who is the 76ers photographer, and then you've got Gui in Denver. Those are the top 4. So those guys always shoot all-star, and those are the 4 guys that shoot the finals. Jesse and Gui are the guys that usually go to the Olympics. So because the finals went late, they couldn't do both. They couldn't do the Olympics and I'm gonna move because I'm looking over in the corner. I'm gonna move that. Okay. They couldn't do both. So they asked myself and Ned Dishman if we do the Olympics. And let's go back 12 months. So the NBA season 12 months ago finished in a bubble, and the entire WNBA season was photographed in a bubble. So Ned Dishman and myself photographed the entire WNBA season last year in Florida. We were in Florida for 97 days in a bubble, shooting 3 games of basketball a day. That went really well. So I think that played well in our favor and is one of the reasons they asked Ned and myself to then shoot the Olympics. So I asked my wife if I could go, because the previous summer I wasn't here for almost 100 days. So I wasn't sure if she was going to be super into me not being here for a large chunk of time again. So this time it was only 37 days, but I asked because I'm a good human being. And she laughed at me and said, of course you're going. And I was like, okay, great. So we flew to Vegas on July the 3rd for training camp. And we were in Vegas for like 2 weeks. So we were in Vegas from July 3rd till the 18th. And then on the 18th, we flew to Tokyo. So this is me at DCA waiting to go to Vegas. And then we photograph. Oh, and so the best thing was they gave me so much merch. They literally sent me like 15 USA basketball t-shirts, hoodie, long sleeve shirts. It was the most merch I've ever seen in my entire life. It was great. So here, so this guy Darren's doing video. He works for USA Basketball. So we're here. We're waiting for player arrivals. But so we were at the Aria for training camp. So this was the view from my room of the back exit to the hotel, and then the MGM and all that, which was my first time in Vegas. Not my type of place. Not my cup of tea at all. But so here's like some photos. So we photographed player arrivals. So this is Bam Adebayo from the Miami Heat arriving. This is Jermaine Grant, sorry, from the Detroit Pistons. Basketball players, there's a lot of them. They're all tall. Damian Lillard arriving. So we photographed player arrivals. Here's Skylar Diggins from the Phoenix Mercury. Sue Bird, obviously. Sorry, I have my highlight enabled, so it's telling me what's overexposed. Sue Bird, obviously. Brittany Griner. So player arrivals is a thing that the league and all basketball teams want photographed, and it's an opportunity for players that are sponsored to show off whatever it is they're wearing that they're sponsored with. So they had training camp running. Let me turn off the highlight, enable wherever the hell it is. Where is it? Histogram off. There we go. That was bothering me. So UNLV was where they did training camp. So we photographed training camp. So, images of them playing. They wanted to get, fun moments whenever they would occur. It's Jerry Colangelo who's in charge. He just retired from being in charge of USA Basketball. Zach Levine, Coach Popovich here. So you're just trying to capture action behind the scenes, close-ups of individual players because they want to share it on their social medias as well. Bradley Beal, obviously, Jason Tatum, any fun moments. We also did portraits of the players. So here we are in the hotel room. Behind the scenes interviews. So again, it's nice that the R5 has the silent shooting feature. Here's where the 3-on-3 basketball practiced, which 3x3 basketball was new at this Olympics. So we had to photograph that as well. And then they had practice games, which they lost all 3 practice games. And everyone was really concerned. Like, it was a big deal. Everyone was super nervous. But so we had practice games in Vegas. So we photographed those. And then we Flew business class to Tokyo, which is the only way to fly to Tokyo because you can lay down flat, and it was amazing. It's ruined all of the plane travel for me because I can't afford to fly business class everywhere. But
You're spoiled now.
it was amazing, and both seats were mine as well because of COVID. You got 2 seats. It was great. So this was the view from my hotel when I got to my hotel. So that's Tokyo in the background. We were on Odaiba Island. We were in the NBC hotel. So this is where NBC did their broadcasts. So it would be like being in Roslyn compared to DC, is how I described it. But and then they also did like the triathlon swimming out there. So, it was cool. We had a lot of restrictions. We were not allowed to go out for 14 days once we arrived. You were highly regulated, but you couldn't use public transportation. You had to use specific transportation. You could only be in your hotel and at the venue. So normally in pre-COVID times, we would have stayed at the same hotel as the players, and we would have photographed a lot of behind the scenes stuff. We weren't allowed to do that. You were either on the FIBA side, so you were either shooting games and therefore not allowed to be near the players, which is hilarious because then at the games, we were near them anyway, or you were on the team side and you were at the hotel with the team doing behind the scenes and you weren't allowed to leave. So there was actually less work for me to do than previous Olympics because we could only shoot games. So here's the 3x3 venue, which was super fun. This is my shadow. This is my fancy self-portrait. And then it was hard not to photograph the empty stands because it was the weirdest Olympics ever. Jill Biden came to our first game. Here's the lovely photo vest they give you that you have to wear that has more pockets than you could think it does. Like you think it has a lot, and then there is more. And then this is me sweating to death because the 3x3 basketball was outside in the summer in Tokyo. But it was still hella fun to shoot. So here, 2 1DX Mark IIIs, 70 to 200 lens, 300 lens, and then the R5 with 1635. I set up a remote as well, which I don't think I was technically allowed to do because remote positions were saved for the pool and for wire services. And I was there with USA Basketball, like I was in-house. But I put it up anyway because that's what I'm used to doing, and it was fine. Because the pool photographer that set up his remote, I had to help him do it because he broke a cord. So the least they could let me do is put mine there as well. So anyway, I digress.
Definitely ask forgiveness rather than permission situation, right?
I definitely did. I was like, oh, I'll put it up. It's over there. Like once the game had started. So this was cool for me. The rock climbing, which was a new event at this Olympics as well, was right behind the venue. So like I got to see the route setters putting up the routes, which was just super interesting to me because I climb. But it was a cool venue. And obviously the 3x3 team won gold. So that's Steph Dawson celebrating. Here they are with their gold medals behind the scenes. And then the regular 5-on-5 basketball was at the Saitama Super Arena, which they can extend. It can be big enough to have American football games in there. It's massive in there. It was crazy. But this is Saitama, which was a good hour bus ride from our hotel. The fun thing about the R5 is it's super easy to make double exposures because it shows you the overlay. So like you can do double exposures with like the 1DX Mark III, but you're guessing. The R5 shows you the overlay, so it makes it super easy. So the Olympic rings were on the underside of the Jumbotron, and then Rui Hachimura, who is the biggest profile Japanese basketball player who also plays for the Wizards. So I was making sure to try and get a lot of him, which then leads us to he was everywhere. Like they were using him to advertise the Olympics as much as humanly possible. And then so like I took this photo and I texted it to him because I thought he'd find it funny, and he did. He's a really nice kid. Because I'm shooting available light, I was trying to be fancy and do some long exposures. So here's one of the court cleaners because of COVID. And then obviously shooting games. And we would shoot non-USA games if they had NBA or WNBA players in them, because we were also technically there for the NBA as well as USA basketball. Trying to make sure you capture a lot of branding. You want to be able to place them at a certain period in time. Obviously getting action. The Japanese women's team won silver, and they were not expected to do well at all, and they won silver, so they celebrated like they won the gold. It was great.
And you're shooting natural light with these, or are you plugged into the strobes? Okay, wow.
This is all natural light. So it was the way they had their natural light aimed was really nice. And because there was no crowd, they turned off the lights that would normally illuminate the crowd so that they could see where they were going. Because those lights weren't necessary. So it almost had like a strobe-like effect. And let me double check what my settings were. So I'm only at ISO 2000, which wasn't bad, for available light. Yeah, the lighting at the arena was really nice. So it helped us. So here you can see all the other photographers. So obviously the men's final, and they like double stack you on benches behind. Joe Ingles, he plays with Denver. Luka Doncic here, and of course, and thankfully we won 3 gold medals out of 3, so it was not an awkward plane ride home. But so like we were able to get super close to the players. So it was funny we weren't allowed to be at the hotel, because like Brianna knows me. Like I lived in a hotel with her for 97 days last summer, because they went to the finals and won. So like we know each other. Like her wife just had a kid. Like I was texting her, congratulating her on that. And so it's funny, like we weren't allowed to be close to them, yet here I am with a 16-35 lens taking a photo, like being really close to her, and we were having a conversation. And then they won the gold medal as well, which was nice. So, yeah. And then immediately after the women's final, we got on a plane. We didn't go to closing ceremonies. We had already checked out of our hotel. It was immediate. So like right after this game, it was like, we're leaving. So there was like no more photos. And then also it was kind of like, we don't need more photos. We're going to let them be, let them enjoy their moment, which was fun. It was cool. Like it was a crazy experience. I probably won't get to do another one. It'll go back to being Jesse and Gui. It was a fun one to be included with. I'm definitely going to try and go back to Japan when there aren't COVID restrictions, because it was a cool place.
Yeah. That's interesting to go there and just kind of be in and out in a location that is so, not easy to get to.
For sure.
Yeah. Stephen, that is awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. We did have a couple of questions in the chat that are really interesting. Rob wanted to know about, how do the rights work since you're freelance? Presumably it's a work made for hire situation, or they maintain the copyright, but they allow you to use images.
So I retain my copyright, but I sell to them my resale rights. So, and it's a shared copyright. So the image, like we share the images. So basically I can't resell my images. So my images are for sale on Getty Images. I get a game rate. I don't get like a percentage of sales. I get paid per event, per game, per day. And then but then we share the copyright. So like if I were to write a book or to have a gallery show, that's fine, but I can't sell those images.
I see. And then Sam was asking, when you are showing your images or using the images, do you have to go through an approval process of any sort?
No. Okay. I don't have to, which doesn't necessarily mean I shouldn't. I'm trying to think if the best way to word it. So I'm a commercial photographer. I'm not a photojournalist. I do not photograph news. So I'm commercially shooting for my client, so I'm promoting my client, I'm presenting my client in a positive way. I'm here to help sell the game of basketball. So I'm not going to photograph something that would ostensibly do the opposite. So if I were to photograph that, I would obviously not be allowed to show it. But so I can't think of an example, but like if something bad were to happen, I just wouldn't photograph it. Because there are plenty of photojournalists there on the sidelines. They can photograph it because that's news to them. But like, it's not a photo I need. But yeah, so I don't have to have an approval process for like putting work on my website. If I were to like write a book or something, I would. I'd get those checked out. But then we're certainly very aware of when we do share images currently. You know, if it's a COVID thing, we have to make sure the person's wearing a mask. You know, if it's a mask situation.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then a very good question from Sam that I think maybe we'll kind of work towards wrapping up here. Sam wants to know, how do you avoid burnout during these long stretches? You know, the NBA season is so long. You've also got WNBA. You've got the D League, or the G League as it is now.
I have no answer. If don't have kids.
Right.
I don't have to deal with that, so I don't have to come home and have like other responsibilities. So my off time is my off time. So when I'm not shooting, and I'm just looking after myself and my wife. Like we have dogs, but like then they look after themselves. But yeah, no, it's a lot, and I don't necessarily have a right answer because it's hard to turn work away. You know, but I'm at the point now where I'm referring more work out, mostly because it's like double booking, but also like like in January, I have a stretch of days where I have 8 games in 10 days. So the 2 days off I have, I'm not booking stuff just for my own damn sanity. Like I don't care what, if a job pops up and they want to give me $50,000, I'm gonna shoot it. But like if it's a small thing, if I'm referring it out. So it's just picking and choosing the right times. Like we were talking earlier, like I'm gonna miss some games in July for the WNBA because I'm taking a vacation. I haven't had a vacation since 2019 because I was supposed to have one in 2020, but then COVID happened, and then I was shooting for the entire summer, and then I've shot the entire time since then. So my poor wife needs a vacation as well. But yeah, so I think it's just being strategic and picking times. But yeah, no, I necessarily don't have it all under control. So it's a work in progress.
It sounds pretty intense. Well, and I can probably answer Eli's question. He gets to buy useless toys for himself. That's the nice thing, is no kids. So
you are missing out on buying so many toys. I thought you meant toys like for photography. I'm like, no, I still buy those. No, like I can come home and I can play video games for myself or just watch a movie and like check out. So it's I'm sure your children are all lovely and they're amazing. I have no interest in it. Like doesn't appeal to me at all, which is fortunate. My wife agrees, so we're in the same boat. But yeah, I'm sure yours are all great and lovely.
That's right. Yeah, you love kids, other people's kids, right?
Not even them.
All right.
I don't get the appeal.
Well, I mean, you've basically managed to set up the life you want to live, and you're doing great with it. So
I still feel like I'm at a point where I'm like, what do I want to do when I grow up? But like I'm 37 and I have a career, but I still feel like I'm a stupid idiot, like teenager at times, like not knowing what the hell's happening.
No,
So
growing up
I
is
don't know how I would manage dependence in that situation. So
Right.
it's just best not to.
Well, they could keep you in line, but yeah. So, but Stephen, we have used up way more than 30 minutes of your time, and I want to thank you for showing your work, for telling us your story, for opening my eyes to what it's like, to be in your shoes. Pretty amazing. Yeah, and just on behalf of APA, I want to just say thank you very much for being here and sharing with us.
Happy to do it. I'm aware I'm in a very fortunate position to shoot for who I shoot for and do the things that I do. And so I'm always very happy to talk about it because it's obviously, it is very interesting. And like just obviously like the amount of equipment and the type of equipment, a lot of people might not have used. And so I'm always happy to share about it because I thankfully understand how it works. So hopefully some knowledge can be imparted, at least in a small way.
No, absolutely. Well, thank you for being here, and thanks to everybody for coming out today. And like Jennifer mentioned, there is today going on in Chicago an all-day business workshop. If you go to APA National's website, you can sign up for that, and all of that will be recorded as well. So if you sign up, you'll have access to the recordings. So I would recommend that you do that and check those out as well. And thank you everyone for being here. All right, we'll go ahead and log off. All right, thanks everyone.